January 29, 2024, News Report 1. The high-level diplomatic talks between China and the United States were successfully held in Bangkok from January 26 to 27. The 12-hour-long face-to-face discussions between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan marked a significant dialogue between the top diplomats of both countries since the Taiwan elections. The White House released a statement stating that the two sides engaged in frank, substantive, and constructive discussions on various international and regional issues, including the Ukraine conflict, the Middle East, North Korea, the South China Sea, Myanmar, and more. Discussions on the Taiwan Strait issue were also conducted, with Sullivan emphasizing the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The U.S. reiterated its opposition to any unilateral changes in the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and expressed the expectation of resolving differences through peaceful means. The talks represent a part of efforts by both China and the U.S. to keep communication channels open and responsibly manage their competitive relationship. Despite being in a competitive state, both sides emphasized the need to prevent competition from escalating into conflict or confrontation. China's foreign ministry stated that Wang Yi emphasized Taiwan as a domestic issue, and the fundamental fact that Taiwan is part of China remains unchanged. Peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait are considered the greatest risk to U.S.-China relations, especially concerning the Taiwan independence issue. The Chinese statement also noted that both China and the U.S. agreed to promote exchanges at various levels and utilize existing strategic communication channels fully. While the talks between Wang Yi and Sullivan achieved some results, they fell short of both sides' expectations. As a result, it was announced that the China-U.S. Fentanyl Working Group would hold its inaugural meeting in Beijing on January 30. The establishment of this working group was decided by U.S. President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping during their November 2023 California meeting, aiming to continue high-level discussions. However, on the second day after the talks, Chinese ambassador to the U.S. Xie Feng, during an event commemorating the 45th anniversary of China-U.S. student exchanges on January 28, called on the U.S. to stop unjustified interrogations, harassment, and deportation of Chinese students studying in the U.S. Xie Feng pointed out cases where Chinese students faced customs interrogations upon entering Washington Dulles International Airport, leading to visa cancellations and repatriation, sparking a diplomatic dispute. The exact timing of a meeting or call between President Biden and President Xi Jinping remains undetermined, indicating an unresolved issue from the talks. While a phone or video call between the two leaders was initially planned, the specific timing has not been finalized, suggesting that both sides have not reached a mutually satisfactory agreement. Although both sides agreed to arrange a call between Biden and Xi Jinping in the spring of this year, the exact timing is yet to be determined. On a confirmed note, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is expected to visit China this year. However, given the broad timeframe, it may imply lingering dissatisfaction on some issues, highlighting the need for further negotiation and communication. News Report 2. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, announced the dismissal of 12 employees on January 26 due to their involvement in the October 7 terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel. Subsequently, 9 countries, including the US, Germany, the UK, Canada, Australia, Italy, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Finland, declared the suspension of aid and funding to UNRWA. The aid provided by these 9 countries accounted for 60% of the agency's expenditures last year. After President Biden took office, the U.S. annually contributed $340 million to the agency, making it the largest donor. France, with significant interests in the Middle East, provided €60 million in aid to UNRWA in 2023. The Japanese government allocated $35 million in November of the previous year, but due to the funds not being disbursed, assistance has been temporarily halted. A spokesperson for UNRWA stated that if funding cannot be secured beyond the end of February, the agency will be unable to sustain its operations. Established in 2019, UNRWA is primarily dedicated to providing humanitarian aid, including education and medical services, to Palestinian refugees, with a total of 5.9 million refugees recorded as of June 14 last year. According to UN regulations, Palestinian refugees can receive $800 per person per month, while the homeless can receive $4,000 per month. In Gaza, 13,000 employees are employed by the agency. Against this backdrop, scholars and journalists from Arab countries have introduced the concept of refugeeism, arguing that Palestinians are not eager to establish a state. They contend that Palestinians choose to maintain refugee status, receiving $4,000 in relief each month. With large annual funding from the international community, they do not need to work. Due to this situation, Palestinian attacks are often used as bait for Israeli retaliation, emphasizing Israel's reasons for preventing their statehood. On another note, the U.S. Central Command announced on the evening of January 27 that a U.S. military base near the Syrian border in Jordan was attacked by drones, resulting in the death of 3 U.S. soldiers and injuries to 34 others. This marks the first time U.S. soldiers have been injured in the Middle East since the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Islamic resistance movement in Iraq claimed responsibility for the attack. The Biden administration issued a statement saying it would hold those responsible accountable, but did not specify the measures to be taken. Some critics argue that the U.S. response in the Middle East appears too mild, calling on the Biden administration to take stronger action. News Report 3. Kyodo News reports that on January 27, 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships chased a Japanese fishing boat into Japan's territorial waters around the Diaoyu Islands. One of the Coast Guard ships carried a device resembling a machine gun, equipped with what appeared to be a machine gun. This marks the second incident of Chinese vessels entering the waters around the Diaoyu Islands since January 11. In addition, Read Outside News reported that since 2020, China has deployed 3 warships in the East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone, equipped with radar and anti-aircraft missiles. These warships use radio signals to expel foreign aircraft and confront Japanese self-defense force escort vessels on patrol. China unilaterally declared the East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone in November 2013, overlapping with the aviation identification zones of Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. The report also mentioned that a journalist from Exclusive News, accompanying a Japanese self-defense force aircraft for an interview in December last year, observed a People's Liberation Army Type 054A missile frigate operating 20 kilometers above the East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone. The Chinese warship used radio signals to expel another Japanese aircraft patrolling within the Air Defense Identification Zone. Against this backdrop, the Japanese government perceives China's dispatch of warships to the East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone as a new normal. The intention is seen as an effort to prevent the Japanese self-defense forces and U.S. military aircraft from supporting Taiwan in the event of a crisis, reflecting China's desire to change the status quo. Moreover, according to the Nihon Keizai Shimbun, the Philippines and the United States plan to hold a 2+2 meeting of foreign and defense ministers in Manila in March. This aims to convey a unified stance on sovereignty issues in the South China Sea to China. Given the tense situation in the South China Sea, the U.S. and the Philippines are taking various measures to demonstrate a firm stance against China. News Report 4. According to the Russian International Information Agency on January 29, a Russian Pacific Fleet frigate named the Sovrasheny recently conducted an anti-submarine exercise in the South China Sea. In the exercise, the Russian frigate simulated detecting a submarine, successfully launching torpedoes and depth charges, and destroying the simulated enemy submarine. The report also noted that the Sovereignty frigate and the flagship of the Russian Pacific Fleet, the cruiser Varyag, left Vladivostok military port on January 22 and are currently engaged in a distant voyage in the Asia-Pacific region. Russia's sudden participation in exercises in the South China Sea has attracted attention. Historically, Russia has avoided military activities in the South China Sea, advocating non-involvement in South China Sea disputes. The purpose and intent of this independent military exercise will be closely observed. News Report 5. According to the Korean business media Business Korea, on January 26, the U.S. officially notified Congress of its decision to sell 40 F-16 fighter jets to Turkey, with a total value of $23 billion. This move is seen as fulfilling the U.S. government's commitment to provide F-16s to Turkey if it approves Sweden's entry into NATO. Turkish President Erdogan signed the documents approving the deal the day after agreeing to Sweden's NATO membership. This sales plan will increase the number of F-16 fighter jets owned by Turkey to 79. However, the U.S. government still needs approval from 4 committees in Congress before officially implementing the sale. News Report 6. On January 29, the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, Legislative Caucus held a meeting to nominate candidates for the positions of Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the Legislative Yuan. The Kuomintang, KMT, nominated Han Kuo-yu and Chang Chi-chen for the Speaker and Deputy Speaker positions, respectively. This has clarified the competitive situation in the Legislative Yuan, with Han Kuo-yu and Yu Shai-kun representing different parties. During this process, the 8 lawmakers from the People First Party, PFP, became a key factor. Candidates Han Kuo-yu, Chang Chi-chen, Yu Shai-kun, and Jiang Chi-chen each held meetings with the 8 PFP lawmakers to seek their support. Legislator Huang Kuo-chang stated that the 8 lawmakers would hold a closed-door meeting to make a voting decision, emphasizing the need for unity in voting. However, during receptions, Huang Kuo-chang appeared more enthusiastic toward Han Kuo-yu and Chang Chi-chen, while being relatively reserved towards Yu Shai-kun and Tsai Chi-chang. The Legislative Yuan has a total of 113 seats, with the DPP holding 51 seats, the KMT 52 seats, and the PFP 8 seats. As no party has a majority, the election results will depend on the support of the PFP's 8 votes. The specific outcome remains uncertain at this point. News Report 7. According to Business Korea, the Seoul Customs Office announced on January 25 that it had arrested the CEO and executives of a company and transferred the case to the Central Local Prosecutor's Office for investigation. The company is accused of exporting 96,000 US-made chips to China since 2020, with a total value of 13.9 billion Korean won, or approximately $750,000. The company is alleged to have packaged the chips and divided them into small samples, sending them to China via 144 air shipments. Among the chips exported to China, 53,000 were designated by the U.S. as strategic items. These chips have the function of converting analog signals into digital signals, which can be used for mass destruction weapons. It is worth noting that exporting such chips requires approval from the South Korean government, and the company is suspected of operating illegally. The arrest indicates that the South Korean government takes a strict stance on illegal exports of critical technology products to ensure that they are not misused or diverted to inappropriate channels. News Report 9. On January 28, the China Securities Regulatory Commission, CSRC, announced through its official public account that it would further strengthen the regulation of margin trading, with specific measures including completely stopping the lending of restricted shares, not allowing stocks to be lent. This measure took effect on January 29. Changing the marketization reporting method of margin securities lending from real-time availability to the next day. In other words, stocks lent by investors can only be borrowed by others the next day. This adjustment led to a 40% decrease in investors' lending balances after implementation. The core purpose of these measures is to prevent large-scale short-selling activities, with the hope of stabilizing the stock market and avoiding excessive declines. However, some opinions argue that the CSRC has continuously disrupted the stock market mechanism over the past few decades, manipulating the market, and resulting in the continuous deterioration of the stock market. Some believe that the CSRC's actions weaken the market's free mechanism, restricting normal behavior of investors, potentially impacting the healthy operation of the market. News Report 10. According to data released by the Hong Kong Rating and Valuation Department on January 29, the residential property price index in Hong Kong for December 2023 was 312.1, marking the 8th consecutive monthly decline and reaching a new low since January 2017. In 2022, Hong Kong property prices experienced a decline for 2 consecutive years, with a decrease of 6.8% in 2022. Overall, Hong Kong property prices have fallen by 22% since reaching a historical high in 2021. In different-sized residential units, the month-on-month decline for medium and small units was 1.4%, while large units decreased by 0.5%. On the other hand, Hong Kong's rental index was 187, showing a 0.9% increase month-on-month, continuing to rise for 4 consecutive months. Due to the decline in property prices, some people are choosing to rent, leading to an increase in rental levels. Throughout the year 2022, Hong Kong rents cumulatively rose by 6.6%. Overall, Hong Kong property prices are mainly influenced by interest rates. Higher interest rates increase loan pressure, leading to a decline in property prices. This reflects the sensitivity of the Hong Kong property market to fluctuations in the macroeconomy and interest rates.